I don't know why that stupid farmer said that I would need backup to take care of a simple pig thief, but... Oh, I may have made a mistake.
All we need to do is go ahead and sell a few more of these stolen pigs on the black market. You know, fake a few more potions, and next thing you know, on to stage 2 of the plan. This community isn't gonna know what hit it.
On today's episode, we're going to be tackling a large 3D print that will probably become my ice giant. Come with us now as you take a look at how we painted this behemoth and some of the tips and tricks that we're going to cover in this video that we haven't talked about already. Hope you guys are excited to watch this as I'm excited to share it with you. Now please understand that because this is a 3D print, there are some artifacts left over from the printing process, and because it was printed in resin, I was a little scared to get aggressive with cleaning those off, as I was afraid it would leave large pock marks, and I wasn't sure what the best way of fixing that was. But in any case, let's get on with the video. Today's video is pseudo-sponsored by Critical Role Minis on Etsy. Now, it's not a real sponsorship, I wasn't given any money, however, we had some major issues with shipping because of COVID, and the order was actually lost at one point, and they were an absolute wonderful person to deal with. They completely replaced the order, they threw in some killer extra minis. This is one of my favorites, and I just had to share it with you guys. And they did ask me for a shout out when we did the video, and I have no problem doing a shout out. These models were wonderful to work with. Now, there were a few issues with artifacts being left over because this is a 3D print, like I said before, and I wasn't sure what the best way to clean things up were. I learned a lot working on this miniature, and going forward when I work on some of the other miniatures, I have some plans on how to handle those artifacts. Now, that's nothing against the person who sold this to me. I don't feel as though there's anything they could have done to really change that, and they were an absolute wonderful person to work with, and I would definitely recommend you check them out if this is something you're interested in. Real quick, I just went ahead and added some gloss white into my airbrush and did a bit of a higher zenithal highlight than what I was able to achieve with just my rattle cans alone. I wanted to make sure I really had a good understanding of where all the highlights were going to be on this cloak, because I haven't really worked with a miniature of this scale before, and I want to start working with some larger things, so I wanted to make sure I really understood the piece I was working on, where the shadows would be and where the highlights would be. Real quick, I wanted to lay out some blue tones on this cape. I wanted the outside to be a dark blue and I wanted the inside to be a light purple. I want to keep this frost vibe because I really plan on using this as a frost giant later on down the road. So this was me testing out my colors, making sure that when I do my frost queen, I want to do it in similar tones. I ended up using Macragge blue as our base tone, and then I kind of lightly sprayed in some dark blue from Vallejo. And this was just to kind of add a mottled look to make this cloak look really old. And then I ended up using a mixture of blues, but mostly going from Altic blue to frost blue from Reaper Miniature Paints. This was to kind of lay in some extreme highlights, as you can see me doing now. Ultimately, I end up using a dark blue wash to kind of help blend everything together, and a dark blue glaze to kind of add some shadows back in. But you could make that same glaze out of Macragge blue and some contrast medium if you have it available. Starting in with some dark grays, I basically used a Scavenge Blight Dinge and a bit of a Dawnstone to lay in our initial highlights. I wanted the inside of the cloak to be kind of dark compared to everything else, as it would be in quite a bit of shadow. And although we're hiding some of our zenithal highlighting, it was just mostly so that I would know where my highlights needed to end up. Lastly, I end up using Spectral White as an extreme highlight. This Spectral White actually has a bit of purple in it. We end up using a bit of a purple wash over things later to kind of bring the purple tones together and to kind of turn those grays into a dark purple, but that gets covered later, so I'm just wanting to address that now so that I don't have to address it later. So there's ways to approach an old weathered metal appearance, and one of the ways that I like to approach it for my villains and my bad guys is I like to use other colors and tones mixed in with the silver color to create an aged and weathered look. The reason I do this is because it sets things apart from my heroes. Now, the way I age metal with hero characters or NPCs is I use black and brown washes, sometimes seraphim sepia, which is more of a yellow color. And I do this so that my heroes and my villains fit in the same universe while still implying that it's aged and weathered or brand new. So it allows for different color variations and color tones. One of the things that we did with this miniature is, and I'm talking about this now because I didn't do a good job when recording it, is we used a lot of black in with the silver tones to paint the whole thing initially. And then in the shadowed areas, like along the bottom of the arm and in other places where shadows would be, I blended in with a wet blend a little bit of a purple wash mixed in with my silver tones. And basically it gives this illusion that the armor is a color change between purple and the dark silver tone, almost giving it this ethereal magic look when the light hits it just right, hence why the blade is so outlandish and ridiculous, and why all the skulls have a bit of glow to them. I want this character to feel very magical. So that's why we did it this way. It also allows us to use regular lead belcher, which was the base tone of all the metals, to be our highlight color, so that when we do like extremes like the silver and some of the edge highlighting with the pure silver, it really stands out. So we took Xandri dust to paint the tabard on his chest as well as what dangles down around his legs, and we just coat the entire thing, doing our best not to get in on anything that's been airbrushed, as it's kind of tricky to touch up airbrushed work, especially with a hand brush. And then what we do is we allow that to completely dry, we put an Agrax Earthshade wash on top of that, and then we start building up highlights by mixing Xandri dust and Wraithbone white. And we do this about 3 levels before we completely allow everything to dry. During those 3 applications, I continued to add more Wraithbone and keep knocking it up a notch, and then just covering a little bit less and a little bit less to create a gradient to try and help blend from those darkest points to those highest points. And then the final dry brush is with a double dosage of the Wraithbone white, almost dry brushed across the surface to catch the highest most points, to give us just a nice crisp outline on all of those edges. I wanted the bone to have similar colors, but I also needed them to be distinct, so I used Xandri dust as their base tones, and then I used that final highlight color and went to an extreme so that the edge highlights would be distinct and different, but yet still feel similar. This is how they're able to stand out against the tabard. I had some footage of me applying all of the highlights to the armor. Unfortunately, it seems that that piece of footage was corrupted, but I essentially took Vallejo's alcohol silver color paint and I applied that only to the most extreme raised edges, as well as on all of those little details. Like you can see on the arms, there's those bands, as well as along the edges and the knuckles and the hands, to make sure that there would be a lot of distinct detail there. So here's a new technique that we haven't talked about, but I think I've done a little bit on here before. Similar to how with a dry brush of extreme highlights you kind of don't get a perfectly straight edge, that can really help to add to the realism. But you can also do this intentionally. So along the edge of the belt I realized we needed a bit of a highlight, so I ended up using an actual Shopti bone that I had left over, and what I'm doing is I'm not perfectly applying it in a straight line. I'm dabbing the brush almost in the same way that you would apply weathering with a sponge, and I'm putting little scratches and nicks, but I'm not drawing a perfectly straight line against that belt. I'm just kind of dabbing it in there, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow the leather to look super old and worn while still doing that edge highlight that we need to have. I wanted to take a second to talk about the weathering that we put across both the back and the inside of the cloak. That's just the weathering pigments that are available through Tamiya, the little sponge-on ones that we've talked about on this channel before. I didn't want to show it because we've talked about stuff like that in the past already and done plenty of videos about it, but if that's something that you guys are interested in, just please let me know and I'll start covering it more in the future. The videos are already long enough and I don't think you guys necessarily want a multi-part video, which is why I tend to leave some things out. Along with the base, we've talked about how to do this cobblestone appearance on bases before in other videos, which is why I didn't show it here. But if you'd like me to start going more in depth with these videos, just let me know, but please be understanding that we could end up back at a situation where a video is between 25 and 30 minutes long, just to be able to get the same information across that I would normally just leave out because we've talked about it already. I'm perfectly fine with doing that, as I usually end up recording all that information anyway and then just deciding to cut it out, so it's no more work on my part than what I'm already doing. And then one thing we didn't talk about with the book is I ended up using Xandri dust with a little bit of white and then hitting it with an Agrax Airshade wash. We then used Dumble Brown on the book itself, and then we did all the edge work with copper and then applied some Nylon Oxide on top of that. I didn't cover the brush work that we did with the sword because that is Turbo Dark paint that was sent to me to try out, and this was really my first attempt at using Turbo Dark, so I didn't want to record it because I don't really know what I'm doing with the product yet. I wasn't really able to get the color change to work as well as I wished it had, but it did come across nicely. And the glow effect that we did on the eyes we talked about in the Terracotta Army video, so I didn't want to cover that again. But again, if you guys would like me to do more in-depth videos, please let me know. Just understand that the length is going to go back up to about 20 minutes of video if we do that. So, thank you guys so much for all the love and support you've shown this YouTube channel as well as my other social medias like TikTok and Instagram. It really means the world to me to know that so many people are supporting what I'm doing and think that what I'm doing is awesome. To all of you who have told me that my videos have inspired you guys to get into miniature painting, I can't thank you enough because that is exactly what I set out to do with these videos, and I hope to inspire many more people to come. Guys, I haven't been doing this for very long. I've only been painting for about 5 years now, and this is the level that I've managed to get to, and I can only imagine where we're all going to end up together down the road. Thank you guys so much again, and if you have any suggestions on future videos, feel free to leave those in the comments. If you're interested in kind of sponsoring a video similar to how we did with this one, and you're not a store owner, there is a way for you to do that. In my link tree in the description, there is an Amazon wish list. If you would like to buy something from there, you can also receive a shout out, whether it be on any social media platform. Just put that in the gift tag and let me know. And then I will be more than happy to basically do a sponsored video for you where we paint up whatever you bought, or we use the tool you bought, and we just do a video centered around the content that you helped me to create. A really great way to help support this channel is to just spread it around on all the social medias where you view your hobby content. It really helps the channel to grow quite a lot. And until next time, guys, I hope that your pile of shame never runs empty, but your display case is always full.